Excellency Pedro Comissário, Ambassadeur permanent President of Mozambique, who is the current chairperson of the African Group.
As the chairperson of the African Group, celebration of 50 years of birth of the OAU-AU. We pay special tribute to the presence in this forum of our illustrious guests of honor, Our Excellency Ms. Nkasazana Dlamini, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, an extraordinary leader forged from the liberation struggle. And our tribute also to His Excellency President Obasanjo, former President of Nigeria, twice democratically elected in spite of previous Mr. President, you are a great statesman of Africa and a model to the African leadership. Madam Chairperson and Mr. President, we are very grateful for your statements that have been a source of great inspiration to all of us. From this morning and this afternoon's rich presentations, we have learned immensely about our past, our present, and even about our future. We are now more aware that we are not celebrating just another date in our common history. We are celebrating collective achievements that Africa was able to attain from 1963 to the present. First and foremost, the unity amongst us. Unity has always been the cornerstone and the guiding principle in the affirmation of the continent's identity. In the concept of the founding fathers of the OAU, unity encompassed the notion of solidarity of Africans toward Africans. That was in fact the starting point of every domestic and foreign policy of every African state. Even our children in schools were taught to sing songs of freedom and unity. Unity was required not only for us to be able to master the strength to overcome the legacy of the past, but also to rebuild and make viable each one of our 54 countries. The progression from OAU to AU bears testimony to the commitment of our leaders in Africa that we need to stand together for our continent. We need to fight together if you want to make Africa a better place. As young diplomats, we were always impressed by the fact that at their summit, our heads of state and government were very vocal and emphatic about that idea. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere of Tanzania and President Obasanjo, here present with us today, were some of the greatest advocates of the need for unity in Africa's purpose and action at continental and international levels. But the unity was essentially a functional concept. Unity was needed for the liberation of our people and for the development of our countries. Today, Africa is a continent virtually free from foreign domination. But let us remind ourselves that freedom did not come easily to Africa. In some cases, peaceful negotiations were not enough. Here and there, to different degrees, it was necessary to wage a liberation struggle. Some of us were compelled to take up arms in order to assert the universal and inalienable principle of self-determination for our peoples. It took some time in some quarters for it to be understood that there is no such thing as democratic colonialism or colonialism with a human face that could eventually be respectful of human rights and fundamental freedoms. It took them some time to realize that apartheid as a crime against humanity could not be reformed or amended. It could only and should only be condemned and abolished, as it was effectively abolished later, thanks to the heroic struggle of the South African people and to the African and international solidarity. Those were the times before the existence of the International Criminal Court. Today, Africa's main battlefront is development. We want to eradicate poverty, to feed our people, to educate our children, and to empower our women. In fact, our women want to empower themselves, not to be empowered. We want to expand and consolidate the realm of democracy, of respect for human rights, of abiding by the rule of law and good governance. We are fully committed and engaged in the materialization of the MDGs. There is a new sense of optimism and a new wave of hope and resolve that it is possible to reach that noble objective. We can say today with some degree of certainty that the Afro-pessimism of the 80s and 90s, the portrait of Africa as a continent of misery and despair, are almost over. Of course, we are still facing daunting challenges in our countries, including the challenges of peace and security, HIV/AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis, refugees and displaced persons, protection of the environment, among others. But we are also conscious of the enormous potential that Mother Africa has in store for us. Africa, as was said here this morning, is one of the fastest growing places on earth. Our continent is endowed with huge natural resources. On top of that, more than 50% of our population, the greatest resource of them all, is made up of young people with less than 20 years of age. We just need to plan better and to work harder to have our dreams come true. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that international cooperation for development is no longer needed. we shall always need it among countries. And it is particularly important for the most vulnerable of us. But the old philosophy, which postulates that aid has to come with strings attached, some of it even with immoral conditionality, appears to no longer be acceptable to Africa. CHAPE, the giant of African literature who just passed away a few months ago in March, said in 1999, at the turn of the century, as this contribution to a book called Predictions, 30 Great Minds of the Future. And I quote CHAPE, "I am optimistic about the prospects for Africa in the 21st century. I don't suggest, however, that simply being optimistic is ever enough. There is work to be done. It is this work that will create the possibility of change for the better. If one does not do this work, then no change will come about." End of quote. Mr. Chairman, I would like to conclude by paying homage to the founding fathers of our organization for their vision and for their leadership. But may I take this opportunity to close on a national note, on a Mozambican note. This month, 27 years ago, the first president of Mozambique, Samora Moses Machel, perished in a plane crash in Muzini, South Africa. He was coming from a meeting of the frontline states in Zambia. It is therefore for us moving and highly significant that these auspicious celebrations in Geneva of the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Organization of African Unity coincide with his death in a mission of peace and solidarity on 19 October 1986. Samora Machel shall always be remembered in Africa and in the world as one of the staunchest defenders of a free and prosperous Africa. I thank you very much.